This video is a continuation of a series where I recommend games that you should watch in their fullness. If you're a basketball superfan like me, then you don't just watch highlights from iconic moments, but rather you make your popcorn and you get on your comfy couch and watch full-length NBA games from years past, as if they're classic movies. In this series, I'm recommending games that are well known and that young NBA fans should watch. But I'm also suggesting games that are lesser known that have somehow slipped through the cracks of the mainstream memory. As always, I'll be providing links to these games in the pinned comment, so that all you'll have to do is click and you're immediately off to viewing. As always, let me know your suggestions in the comment section below. Now without further ado, let's get into it. First off is the 2007 USA Scrimmage game. This was simply a meaningless exhibition game between the United States players before they took on the rest of the world. But don't tell them this game was meaningless. These were players who were motivated and focused on returning the gold medal to the United States, and it showed on the court. Technically, this wasn't an all-star game, but if it was, it would likely be considered the greatest all-star game of all time. The white team was led by LeBron James, the blue team was led by Kobe Bryant, and these were the two leaders who would be the driving forces of this game. One particularly enjoyable aspect of this game was the chemistry on the court between LeBron James and Jason Kidd. Around this time, LeBron had often lobbied for his Cavs to make a trade for Kidd. It never ended up materializing, but based on what we saw from them on the court this game, it makes for a quite interesting what if. The final minutes of the game were decided by LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, and it's an unforgettable conclusion. I won't spoil it, I just recommend checking it out. Next up is Game 6 of the 1988 NBA Finals, an intense battle between two historic franchises, the Magic Johnson-led Los Angeles Lakers and the Isaiah Thomas-led Detroit Pistons. The Lakers are down in the series 3-2, and it's a must-win situation for them. Late in the game, Isaiah suffers a severe ankle sprain and decides to battle through it, and it translates to one of the greatest and most heroic performances of all time. The game is close to the very end, and even has some controversial moments late in the game. If you want a nail-biter with legends, tension, and drama, then this one's for you. I gotta sneak in a game of the GOAT every time I make one of these videos, but if you're looking for a great game of Michael being Michael, then check out Game 1 of the 1992 NBA Finals. Many of you guys are familiar with the backstory already, but Jordan and the Bulls are looking to win their second straight NBA championship. They'll be facing Clyde Drexler and the Blazers, who are looking for their first title. Meanwhile, the media has been pushing the narrative that Clyde Drexler might be as good as Michael Jordan. They have similar play styles, they're both scoring two guards, but the media is saying that Drexler is just like Jordan, except Drexler is a better three-point shooter. Just days before Game 1 is played, Michael Jordan is being interviewed and is asked about the comparison to Drexler in terms of three-point shooting, to which Jordan says, "Drexler is a better three-point shooter than I choose to be." When the game finally begins, it's Jordan who breaks multiple finals records, all while putting on a show from deep. When Jordan gave his iconic shrug, commentator Marv Albert said it indicated Jordan couldn't believe what he was doing, but that's definitely not how I interpreted it. I always understood Jordan's shrug as his way of saying, "I tried to tell you guys." Game 7 of the 1988 Eastern Conference Semifinals between the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks. This is one of the greatest solo duels of all time between Larry Bird and Dominique Wilkins. The game is close, intense, and competitive. These legends will exchange baskets right up to the end. Definitely watch this one if you want to gain a greater appreciation for Dominique or Bird. This next one is one of my favorite games of all time. Game 4 of the 1995 Eastern Conference Finals between the Indiana Pacers and the Orlando Magic. Not only is it one of my favorites, but simply put, it's one of the greatest games of all time. You have Shaq, Penny, and Horace Grant all playing major roles for the Magic, while Reggie Miller is doing his usual clutch things and gets a huge helping hand from Rick Smits. The final minute is absolutely unbelievable. If you are unfamiliar with this game, please check it out, because every fan who appreciates the game's history should be familiar with this classic. 2007 playoffs, Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals, where LeBron's Cavs are taking on the Pistons with the series tied at 2 games. The Pistons were a few years removed from winning a championship. They were a contending team full of proven veterans who had made it as far as the conference finals for the last 5 years straight. Meanwhile, LeBron was just 22 years old with a roster of guys like Larry Hughes, Anderson Varejao, and Boobie Gibson. LeBron's Cavs had no business being in this position, let alone beating the Pistons. What ensued was one of the most legendary performances of all time, as the King carried his Cavs down the stretch. If you've never seen this game, I definitely don't want to spoil the details for you, but this was the first moment where I realized LeBron's true potential. Now, if you're looking for an awesome but less talked about Kobe performance, then I would check out this regular season game against the Grizzlies in 2001. The context of this game is this is a matchup where Shaq didn't play due to a suspension because he essentially tried to destroy Brad Miller just a few nights earlier. This was one of the first games where Kobe showed us what he was capable of offensively with Shaq not on the floor. This is what he could do as the focal point of the offense. Kobe's career high prior to this game was 51 points, and he would have that beat by the end of the third quarter, which is all he would need. This was a really young Kobe, so he scored these points with his flashy athleticism combined with his sound perimeter game. I definitely recommend this one to any Kobe fan. If you're more into the powerful and dominant side of the Lakers dynasty, then I definitely recommend checking out Game 1 and Game 2 of the 2000 NBA Finals, where Shaq displayed his power and wrath in all of its glory. When I hear people make any comparisons to Shaq, these are the first two games I think of. He was the ultimate bully in the paint, and I still marvel at the way he tossed aside giant opposing defenders. If you weren't around to watch these games, you should, because the Diesel was like nothing the league has ever seen before or since, and no games give you a better visual representation of that than these two. If you want to remember a player who had a small flash of utter greatness in his youth, then I recommend checking out Game 1 of the first round of the 2009 East Playoffs, where Derrick Rose's Bulls took on Pierce and Allen's Celtics. One of the greatest basketball seasons ever was 2009. There were so many special moments that year, especially in the playoffs. This series was incredible as well, and a 20-year-old Derrick Rose took over that night in his playoff debut. It's an absolute classic. If you would rather watch something from the greatest Bull himself, then I have a couple Jordan games for you to check out. First, it's what's known as the Michael Jordan Con game. It was a 1997 matchup between the Bulls and the Knicks. In short, the story is that Jeff Van Gundy, who was the coach of the Knicks, had called Jordan a con man in an interview just days before their matchup. He essentially said that Jordan was the kind of guy who would befriend guys off the court just to get an edge on them and then torch them on the court. Jordan took offense to this, and this was well known and well documented heading into the game. When the game was actually played, Jordan did not disappoint, to say the least. He was aggressive and he was angry, and you could see it on the court. After Jordan was done unleashing his wrath on the rival Knicks, he let Van Gundy hear about it. Definitely check this one out. The other Jordan game doesn't have all that backstory to it, but if you want to see a game of poetry in motion, this is the one for you. It took place in the latter half of the Bulls' 72-10 run in the 1996 season. All of Jordan's footwork and mid-range artistry was on display this game. If you're a young hooper looking to improve your technique and fundamentals, this is a terrific game from Jordan for you to study. Lastly, if you're looking for an 80s classic between the greatest NBA rivalry of all time, check out Game 1 of the 1987 Finals between the Lakers and Celtics. I used to watch this series a lot on VHS tapes as a kid, because this series was incredibly fascinating to me and still is. The contrast in style of play between Boston and Los Angeles was incredible. Boston preferred to run their offense with half-court sets and really took their time to let plays develop through the postgame, while the Lakers treated almost every single rebound like it was the start of a track meet. I've never seen a team who pushed the tempo as vigorously as the 1987 Lakers. A really intriguing contest between these two historic franchises. Let's take a look at one game from an absolute classic series. Game 3 of the 2001 Eastern Conference Semifinals between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors. This series featured many amazing solo battles between Allen Iverson and a prime Vince Carter. But I'm recommending this game specifically so you can see the dazzling abilities of the one they called Half Man, Half Amazing. Without spoiling too much, this was likely the greatest performance of Vince Carter's amazing career, as he was torching the net from just about everywhere on the court. If you're looking for a performance that will give you a greater appreciation for Vinsanity, then this game is for you. On January 22, 2006, Kobe Bryant scored 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. But unfortunately, that performance happened on the same night as one of the greatest regular season games in NBA history, which of course overshadowed that game. On that same evening, Ray Allen and the Seattle Supersonics were taking on Steve Nash and the Phoenix Suns. The stars must have aligned on that night, because offense was clearly the theme of the NBA on that day, and both teams utterly exploded offensively. The game was extremely close throughout, as there was a whopping 16 ties and 21 lead changes in this epic game. I won't completely spoil it, but you'll want to watch this one to the very end, as it had a legendary ending coming from a legendary clutch player. Next up, Lakers vs. Blazers in the 2006 to 2007 NBA regular season. Let's be real, it wouldn't be a Johnny Arnett video if I didn't mention Kobe's name at least once. This was the first game of the Mamba's historic stretch where he scored at least 50 points in 4 straight contests, and without question, this one was his most impressive. This was absolute peak Black Mamba in the sense that Kobe was refusing to pass the ball to his teammates like Smush Parker and Luke Walton, and was instead forcing up insanely difficult shots and burying them with regularity. This was also a very close match with plenty of late game heroics. If you need a game to witness just how utterly indefensible Kobe was at his very best, then this was the game for you. Next is Game 2 of the 1991 NBA Finals. This was a highly anticipated finals matchup between Magic Johnson and the Lakers and Michael Jordan and his Bulls. After the Lakers had won the first game, the narrative in the media was that Magic is the leading team player that wins all the championships, while Michael is simply the scoring leader who can't win it all. What ensued was one of the greatest solo performances of all time. Everybody knows about Michael Jordan's iconic hand switch layup, but what's often forgotten is how Jordan was utterly losing his mind up to that moment, as he had one of the hottest hands that had ever been seen in the finals. If you want to see peak MJ doing his thing, while witnessing the game that most historians see as the passing of the torch from Magic to Michael, then this is the contest you're looking for. Next up is the 2015 to 2016 regular season match between the Golden State Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder. You all know this iconic game. It's one of the most famous shots in Steph Curry's career, with one of the most memorable calls from the all-time great commentator Mike Breen. The thing is, this game was so much more exciting than simply that final highlight. Quite frankly, it was one of the best games of that entire year, as Curry had a shooting performance for the ages, while the Thunder were doing everything they could to put out the fire. If you were not fortunate enough to be watching this recent classic as it took place, then I definitely recommend you go back and enjoy it. The 2007 to 2008 opening night between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Houston Rockets. Not only was this an incredible game, but it was jam-packed with drama. Kobe had demanded a trade in the off-season leading up to that game, as he was frustrated at the lack of talented support after back-to-back first-round exits at the hands of the Phoenix Suns. The Los Angeles crowd was so frustrated at Kobe that they were booing him in Staples Center during player introductions, while the Mamba went on to have an incredible game, and by the end of the night, they were chanting his name. This contest was jam-packed with memorable moments, as Tracy McGrady scored possibly the most ridiculous field goal in NBA history, and the final 2 minutes had a comeback for the ages, capped off with clutch shots down the stretch. Whether you're a Laker fan or a Laker hater, this is a good one to check out. Next up is Cavaliers vs. Bucks in a regular season matchup in February of 2009. This is one of the most underappreciated LeBron James performances of his career, and honestly, I bet many of his younger fans don't even know this happened. Not only does LeBron go on to have one of his greatest scoring performances of all time, but during a 4-minute stretch, he had one of the most unconscious, in-the-zone moments that I've ever seen in the game of basketball. Some may consider LeBron as a pass-first player, but he certainly wasn't on this night, as he was taking heat-check shots that would make even Kobe blush. It's definitely a must-see game if you consider yourself a LeBron fan. Next up, Game 4 of the 1987 NBA Finals. This was the final playoff series between Los Angeles and Boston in the 1980s, and it was certainly one to remember. In a way, this game perfectly summed up the fantastic rivalry between these two squads, as the emotion and intensity was extremely high, while both superstars, Magic and Bird, were trading clutch baskets down the stretch. If you want to witness the greatest team rivalry in NBA history in all of its competitive glory, then certainly click the link to this game. Next is the 2001 All-Star Game. Maybe you're craving a bit more of a fun exhibition match where the heat of the competition doesn't really crank up until the fourth quarter. Simply put, this All-Star Game is one of the greatest that the league has ever seen. In truth, it's the perfect example of what most of us are hoping for when it comes to All-Star Game intensity. You had the stars, the highlights, and the showboating for a solid 3 quarters. But when it was winning time, the best players locked in, with an array of clutch baskets in the game's most crucial moments. Maybe you're looking for something even more old school. How about Game 7 of the 1969 NBA Finals between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics? There's tons of important context to this matchup. For one, the Lakers had been losing to the Celtics constantly in the 1960s, and had yet to beat them in the NBA Finals. Yet the Lakers owner, Jack Kent Cooke, was so confident that this was finally their year that he predicted a Game 7 victory heading into that matchup. Meanwhile, it was the final season of Bill Russell's legendary career, so ending his playing days with a Game 7 victory and yet another NBA championship would be the ultimate storybook ending. It's a hard-fought, close game throughout, and if you watch this one, you'll probably earn a greater appreciation for two legends specifically, Jerry West and Bill Russell. If you're like me and consider yourself a Kobe fan, then it's always worth watching the Lakers versus the Suns in Game 6 of the 2010 Western Conference Finals. So I gotta be real with you guys. I don't remember a time where Kobe was being put in the GOAT conversation as much as he was after this performance. It makes sense as he had 4 championship rings, was the leader of the defending champions, and was on the verge of winning his 5th title, equaling him to the legendary Magic Johnson. What the Mamba did on this night was truly jaw-dropping to witness, as he completely took over the game, hitting an array of iconic shots that only he could hit. After this performance, everyone, including the TNT telecast crew, were talking about his standing against Michael Jordan. If you're someone who believes Kobe belongs in that GOAT conversation, then this game is a great one for you to enjoy. If you want to witness what is literally one of the greatest series in NBA history, then I would check out any game from the 2009 first round between the Bulls and the Celtics. The defending champion Celtics were trying to prove that they were still contenders, despite the fact that they had lost Kevin Garnett for the remainder of the season. On the other hand, the Bulls were a decent 7th-seeded team, and despite the fact that they were underdogs, they saw an opportunity to achieve a massive upset. What ensued was arguably the greatest playoff series in NBA history, from the perspective of purely competitive basketball. The suspense was basically non-stop, as 5 out of the 7 games in the series were decided by only 1 possession. Definitely check out this one for all the beautiful drama. One of my favorite players of all time is the former Boston Celtics star Rajon Rondo. Personally, I think many people have forgotten just how elite he was towards the end of their title contending years. For a small stretch of time, he was entering the conversation of the best point guards in the NBA, and a perfect game to watch for an example of that would be Game 2 of the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals between his Celtics and the Miami Heat. That was a close and thrilling contest throughout, and the only reason Boston was competitive in the first place is because of how Rondo controlled the game in a variety of ways. He's not typically referred to as an NBA legend, but this was certainly a legendary performance. Next up is Game 5 of the 1986 Western Conference Finals between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Houston Rockets. To me, this game was the perfect summary of 80s basketball. You had highly powered squads who were jam-packed with superstar talent. The game was extremely physical and even had several fights involving star players, and it was all capped off with an absolutely thrilling finish. One of the reasons this contest stood out to me is because of all of the bad blood between the superstar players, and the way these guys fought without fear of suspension during crucial moments of the biggest game of the season is something you will never see in the modern NBA. Definitely worth a watch. Next up is a pair of Christmas Day games, which I personally believe are the two greatest Christmas games of all time. The first was between the LA Lakers and the Miami Heat in 2004. In order to understand how special this contest was, you need to understand the context of the situation leading up to the event. It was right after Shaq and Kobe's notorious split in 2004. At the time, there was such bad blood between the two superstars that pretty much everyone was well aware of their beef. Their first regular season match against one another was so highly anticipated that it even had greater viewership than many NBA Finals games. When the game actually started, it didn't fail to live up to the hype. Kobe and Shaq had several chippy moments. The Mamba got ridiculously hot from the perimeter, and it all ended up coming down to the game's final shot. If you've seen this game before, then it's definitely worth a rewatch. But if you've never seen it before, then it's an absolute must-watch. The second Christmas Day game was an NBA championship rematch between the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers in 2016. This was a huge measuring stick game, as it was between the two best teams in the league. The Warriors were looking for revenge after they blew a 3-1 lead in the 2016 finals. But this time, instead of a streaky shooting Harrison Barnes, they had an elite Kevin Durant. The Cleveland crowd was electric, and what ensued was a holiday classic, with an ending that is impossible to forget. Next is Game 1 of the 1995 Eastern Conference Semis between the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks. Back in the 90s, these two teams represented one of the fiercest rivalries in all of basketball. To this day, many people believe that Reggie Miller is a very overrated player, in the sense that he might not have the most accolades, and he doesn't have the most well-rounded stats. But one organization who knows very well that Miller is in fact not overrated is the New York Knicks, and this game is one of the major reasons why. This contest was extremely close and suspenseful, and towards the end, Miller provided a clutch finish for the ages that every basketball fan should be familiar with. Next is one of the greatest solo battles that I have ever witnessed, which came in Game 6 of the 2001 Eastern Conference Finals between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Milwaukee Bucks. Facing elimination, the Milwaukee Stadium was a raucous atmosphere, and the Bucks responded to that energy accordingly. Leading the way for them was their superstar sniper, Ray Allen, who was absolutely unconscious from three-point distance. But the answer was up to the challenge, as Allen Iverson put on his own monstrous performance, hitting insanely difficult shots, while dealing with all kinds of physical punishment. Both players scored north of 40 points, and if you consider yourself a fan of either of these Allens, then this is a great game to watch in order to witness them at the height of their powers. The first game is the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Los Angeles Lakers. Kobe Bryant versus LeBron James in the 2009 regular season. Now this should have been an NBA Finals preview, and even during the broadcast, the commentators mentioned how the Cavs were likely to meet the Lakers in the NBA Finals. Admittedly, this wasn't the best performances from LeBron and from Kobe, but the anticipation and the excitement was there. You could sense it during the game. You could see how each player wanted to best one another. And it's fascinating watching this game in hindsight, seeing this matchup as an actual possibility for the NBA Finals. Without question, these two players were seen as the two best players in the league at this point, as they were both MVP candidates. Other guys stepped up and had big games as well. And I won't spoil the outcome, but this is a great one to watch if you want to go into the what-if territory of this highly desired finals matchup that never ended up panning out. Next up, I have the 1990 NBA All-Star Game. When you ask old heads about their opinions about modern NBA All-Star games, they're usually going to be pretty critical against it, and talk about how All-Star games were better back in their day. Well, one of the best All-Star games to look at from generations past is actually the 1990 NBA All-Star Game. You had plenty of talent throughout the league, and you had a ton of team-first playmakers who were always willing to make the extra pass. The tempo of this game was incredibly fast, and it was filled with plenty of highlights, plenty of no-look passes, and plenty of dunks. But it also had just enough defense to keep the game honest. And if you're a younger fan who's looking to educate yourself on the skills and abilities of older players, then this is a great game to look at, as guys like Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, Clyde Drexler, and Charles Barkley each put on a show. This is one I definitely enjoyed from my childhood, and I just recently watched it once again. It was very entertaining all the way down to the wire. So if you're a big fan of the All-Star Game atmosphere, I definitely recommend this one. Rockets vs. Lakers in 2003, the first meeting between Shaquille O'Neal and Yao Ming. Make no mistake, I was a Lakers fan in the early 2000s, and my favorite player was Kobe Bryant. So usually, I got most excited about the individual matchups between Kobe and Iverson, Kobe and McGrady, and Kobe and Vince Carter. But this one was different. This time, I was more excited to see what happened with Shaquille O'Neal than anything else. The reason being was because Yao Ming was this extremely hyped prodigy, who was just making his very anticipated entrance to the NBA with what seemed like an entire country's support behind him. Leading up to this contest, it was all the media could talk about, and Shaq provided plenty of ammunition and anticipation as he had some particularly spicy comments leading into this battle. What ensued was one of the most memorable moments of my basketball life. And I don't want to completely spoil it, but at the very least, you'll really want to watch the first 6 minutes of the first quarter, because what ensued had my jaw hitting the floor. This game is a great example of the greatness and strength of Shaquille O'Neal, while also showing the incredible potential of Yao Ming. Unfortunately, their primes didn't totally overlap, and Yao Ming's injuries kept him from being as good as he could have been. But this one game, capsulated in a moment, had us all imagining, what if? Next up is the 1992 Olympics between the Dream Team and Angola. Most older basketball fans are going to be familiar with this game, and I'm going to guess many of us have seen it. But if you're a younger basketball fan, this is definitely one you want to check out. If you're curious to see the greatness of the 92 Dream Team on full display, then this is the matchup you want to see, as they came out of the gates absolutely on fire and put on a show with their overwhelming talent. There was also some intense moments between the players that I won't completely spoil, but you want to watch that as well. Next up is the 1993 NBA Finals between the Bulls and the Phoenix Suns, and we're looking at Game 4. If you're a Michael Jordan fan, this is definitely the game that I recommend. Often the guy who was guarding Michael Jordan was Dan Marley, who was one of the best offensive players in the entire league at this point. And just all around, no matter who was defending him on the Phoenix Suns, they were putting in a great effort. But Jordan went on to have one of the greatest scoring performances in the history of the league, regardless of the incredible defense. There were so many great and quality players involved in this epic battle, and this was a must-win for Phoenix, as they were down in the series 2-1. This specific performance is a good game to watch if you want to experience or you want to relive Michael Jordan's absolute peak, as he put on full display his ability to take over a game and crush the opponent's spirit. The next one is the San Antonio Spurs versus the Golden State Warriors in Game 1 of the Western Conference semifinals. I find this one particularly fascinating for a couple of reasons. What you have is two dynasties overlapping that most people never actually witnessed. You have the tail end of the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, going up against the very early days of the Warriors formation. A young and baby-faced Steph Curry was absolutely unconscious in this battle, and of course he had his running mates Draymond Green and Klay Thompson backing him up. It was one of the most awesome yet least talked about performances of Steph Curry's career, and honestly, we all should have been able to see in this moment just how great he was actually going to become. But for the San Antonio Spurs dynasty, we also saw their greatness, their team play, and their poise under pressure be displayed in this contest. It's an absolute thriller down the stretch, and I won't spoil it, but I definitely recommend you check it out. And then I have the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Boston Celtics in Game 6 of the 1987 NBA Finals. This was the very last NBA Finals battle between Magic's Lakers and Bird's Celtics, and it was an absolute classic. For a while, the game was extremely close and tense, but there was one especially iconic moment that was the turning point in the game, and anyone who was old enough to witness it will remember it. This was a fantastic battle between legends, and on a side note, there is actually proof in this game that flopping to a small extent was present in the league at this time. It wasn't very common, but clearly it existed. The first game is the Dallas Mavericks versus the Sacramento Kings in Game 5 of the first round of the 2004 playoffs. This was an epic battle between many great players, and many names that any hardcore basketball fan will recognize. You had a battle between two of the best power forwards in the game at that time, between Dirk Nowitzki and Chris Webber, but you also had two elite point guards in a young Steve Nash and Mike Bibby. You had terrific performances from all of the usual suspects, and at the time, these were two of the most exciting and potent offenses in the entire league, and it translated to an unusually high scoring game for that era. It was an absolute nail-biter down the stretch, and I'm sure any Mavericks fan or Sacramento Kings fan who's been around for a while will let you know that this was one of the greatest playoff games that they've ever witnessed. The second game is Michael Jordan's fifth game back in the 94-95 regular season against the New York Knicks. This game is commonly referred to as the double nickel game. If you're a fan of Michael Jordan, or even just appreciate his impact on basketball history, then I definitely recommend checking this one out. You have to understand, this might just look like another great Michael Jordan game, but at the time, this was a really big deal for so many reasons beyond that. For example, MJ had just come back from playing baseball, and in the 4 regular season games leading up to this contest that he had played, he didn't look like the same Jordan he was before his retirement, as 2 out of those 4 games were extremely poor shooting. NBA analysts and many basketball fans all around the world were starting to question if we'd ever see the same Michael Jordan ever again, which is why this game meant so much to so many people, because MJ looked like his old self as he exploded and torched the Knicks for what was at the time the most points ever scored at Madison Square Garden. If you like Michael Jordan highlights, you like thrilling finishes, and you like learning about history and experiencing it as if you were in the moment, then I definitely recommend this game. The next game is the 1992 NBA All-Star Game. This is quite possibly my favorite All-Star game in NBA history, and this one was also significant in basketball history, as it was well after Magic Johnson's first retirement for the NBA. As you all know, he left the game of basketball because of the HIV virus that he obtained. And when the league allowed him to participate in this All-Star game, it was a pretty controversial thing. Sure, many basketball fans were super excited, but on the other hand, you had a lot of players who were concerned for their own safety, like Karl Malone, for example. During his introduction, you could sense the energy, but also the awkwardness within the air. What ensued was a wholesome and exciting basketball game, and the final few minutes were some of the most exciting, thrilling, and heartwarming moments that you could witness as a fan. It was the perfect send-off to Magic Johnson at that time, and if you call yourself an NBA fan, you definitely should familiarize yourself with these moments. Next is the 1976 NBA Finals, Game 5, Suns vs. Celtics. Simply put, this game is usually known as, quote, the greatest game ever played. It went into several overtimes, and there was a lot of star players involved, like John Havlicek, Dave Cowens, JoJo White, Paul Westphal, and so on. Multiple stars in this game played 60 minutes of the contest, and it was so thrilling and so exciting down the stretch that the crowd stormed the court after the game was over, even though the championship had not yet been decided. It's way back in history, so you have to understand that styles and approaches were very different at that time. But if you're someone that can enjoy and appreciate old school basketball, then this one is a must. Next is the Bulls versus the Mavericks in the 1995-96 regular season. This one doesn't necessarily have some big historical significance, and it was just another regular season game. But with that being said, it was very exciting and extremely competitive. This was the year that the Bulls had their record-setting 72-10 season, and in this contest, it was Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman taking on a young Jason Kidd and Jamal Mashburn of the Dallas Mavericks. Jason Kidd had a fantastic performance and looked as good as ever, as he put up a monstrous triple-double. On the other hand, MJ was MJ, and the game was close down the stretch, with a couple of underrated heroes in this contest. Obviously, the Bulls won a lot of games this season, but with that being said, a few of them were some nail-biters and had Chicago sweating. This was one of them, and I personally enjoyed it, and I think you would too. Then we have the Los Angeles Lakers versus the New York Knicks in the 2011-2012 regular season. Most of you know about this game at this point. This was the peak of the Jeremy Lin excitement, but it was also the game where Ahmad Shumpert famously talked about Kobe Bryant, letting him know that he, quote, had a great game. For just being a regular season contest, this one certainly has a lot of relevance in basketball history, as it summed up the sensation of Jeremy Lin, but also gives us some good perspective on just the kind of competitor that Kobe Bryant was. This was a fantastic game in Madison Square Garden, between two of the most valuable franchises in the entire league. And of course, it was very exciting down the stretch.
I heard a rumor, I don't know if it's true, I'm told that you, at a celebrity event to raise money, a charity event, you were the celebrity coach, and you were the first coach then that coached Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson when they were on the same team. They had never played together. This was before the Olympics, right?
Yes, it absolutely was. I did get to the point where, like, I mean, I'm one of the celebrities and I've been doing nothing. I mean, what are you going to do? I've been sitting on the bench for the whole game, and I figured I better there's like 2 minutes left in the game, and I figured I better do something. So I called a 20-second timeout, right. And I had nothing to say, of course. And I looked over, though, at Michael, and he was pissed. And he looked at Magic, Magic's being his Magic self, having a good time. I think the score was 240 at that point. No one played any defense. Right. And Michael was like, hey, man, you want to win this? And all of a sudden, you could see a light bulb go off in Magic's head. He was like, oh, Jesus Christ, he means it. Yeah. And then, of course, it got really competitive.
In the 2017 NBA All-Star Game, the final score was 192-182, which is the record for the most points ever scored in an All-Star Game. Technically. The reason why I say technically is because from 1985 to 2005, Magic Johnson hosted another kind of exhibition game involving many of the NBA's All-Stars. The event took place every NBA offseason in that 20-year stretch. The event was called a Midsummer Night's Magic. It was a charity event, and among the festivities was a game involving many of the league's best players. Unlike most All-Star games, though, players were not confined to play with teammates from their own conference. Which brings us to August 7th, 1988, in Los Angeles at the Great Western Forum. Representing Team White was Isaiah Thomas, Karl Malone, Dominique Wilkins, Clyde Drexler, Michael Cooper, Mark Aguirre, Reggie Theus, Muggsy Bogues, Roy Tarpley, and Ron Harper. They were being coached by Magic's best friend, the celebrity Arsenio Hall. The blue team was represented by Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Reggie Miller, John Williams, Mark Jackson, Cliff Livingston, Kiki Vanderway, and Spud Webb, and they were being coached by the great Rob Lowe.
This is literally the most exciting thing that I've ever seen.
Now first, here's what you need to know about this game. There are two kinds of All-Star Game fans. The first is the fan that prefers a close, competitive, and defensive-minded game, and then there's the second fan, who prefers minimal to little defense in return for a game with as many flashy highlights as possible. If you are the latter of All-Star Game fans, then this game is for you. The game was extremely loose, fun, and highlight-filled throughout. There were a couple great defensive plays early on, but let's be clear, those were anomalies. Anyone who says old school players always took defense seriously clearly never watched the Midsummer Magic games, because the obvious priority was to get as many reactions out of the crowd as possible. Several players excelled in that area more than others. Jordan had over 50 points with a number of fierce dunks and acrobatic layups. Unsurprisingly, Dominique Wilkins and Clyde Drexler were consistent crowd pleasers as well. On one particular play, Dominique dunked over Magic's back so hard that he nearly ended his whole career right on the spot. The score was back and forth throughout the game, but again, it wasn't the most competitive affair as both teams were scoring at a blistering pace.
I just can't emphasize enough how insanely highlight-packed this exhibition match was, as it may have been the most dunk-heavy display from NBA stars that I've ever seen. One of the major highlights of the night was when the crowd was standing in excitement to see Magic Johnson go one-on-one with his all-time great defensive teammate Michael Cooper. At the end of the play, it was Magic who took home the bragging rights.
Remember at the beginning of the video when Rob Lowe was telling Conan about Jordan's competitiveness changing the tone at the end of the game and how he was determined to win? Well, now we're entering that sequence. With less than 20 seconds left in the game, Jordan brings the ball up and then makes his move. After drawing the double team, he then finds Kiki Vanderway for the layup underneath. Not only did the basket give Jordan and the Blue a 1-point lead with only 10 seconds remaining, but it also gave the team their 200th point, which has never been done in any other form of NBA basketball. The Jumbotron could only display a 00 and the word tilt since it wasn't even designed to display as high as 200 points. Now it's Team White's turn. The ball gets inbounded and is given to Dominique in the post. He drives baseline and hits a very difficult layup to put his team back up by 1 point with only 5 seconds remaining. Now it's back on Jordan's shoulders. The ball is inbounded to him, he drives towards the middle, and he's fouled from behind while attempting a jumper. With only 2 seconds left, Jordan would proceed to the free throw line and knock down a pair of clutch free throws once again to put the Blue back on top. Now Team White gets the ball back with only 2 seconds to shoot and a chance to win this epic game. It all comes down to this. But, believe it or not, there is actually no available footage for the ending of this game.
What?
No, seriously, I cannot find it anywhere. I've searched all over YouTube, all over the internet, everywhere, for hours, and I'm basically convinced that it doesn't exist. It's almost as if Michael Jordan had the tapes destroyed just so people think that his free throws won the game. What actually happened at the end of the game was a fall-away circus shot by the amazing Clyde Drexler, which he buried, winning the game at the buzzer. In all seriousness, if any of you have the final play of this game, or know where it can be found deep in the internet, post it in a link in the comment section and I will gladly pin your comment, that way we all can see it.
These are some of the unofficial stats from this game. Michael Jordan obviously led the way for Team Blue, as he dropped 54 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists on 56% shooting. He was also basically living above the rim, as he entertained the crowd with at least 10 total dunks in this game alone. As for Team White, Dominique Wilkins led the way as he was going toe-to-toe with Jordan, which was quite common for the two stars during their primes. The human highlight film had 46 points and 9 rebounds on 66% shooting. The game-winning hero, Clyde Drexler, finished with 29 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 assists on 78% shooting. On a somewhat humorous note, this was Magic Johnson's annual event, but at that point, his team had lost every single year he participated, as he lost in '86, '87, and now 1988. Making him 0-3 in his own contest. After this, he went on to lose in '89 and 1990 as well, giving him an 0-5 start before he finally won the event in 1992. Talk about being unkind to your host.
There's no box score of this game, and there's still limited footage, but I still thought it was a rare gem that hardly anyone knows about, so I thought it was worth bringing to your attention. The year is 1991. Magic Johnson and the Los Angeles Lakers are making their trip to the NBA Finals once again, where they'll be meeting Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls. Magic was coming off of a decade that he essentially owned. He had won 5 championships in the 80s, and he was making an incredible 9th trip to the NBA Finals. Magic was also only 1 year removed from being a back-to-back MVP winner, and he was already the all-time leader in assists. He was a giver who was seen as the definition of a leader who makes his teammates better. If there was one player in the NBA at that time that you would describe as the face of the league, it would probably be Magic Johnson. Now, Michael Jordan was in a much different position. In our modern day of the year 2020, we see MJ as the greatest player of all time, and we know him as a 6-time NBA champion and a perennial winner who did whatever it took to reach the mountaintop. That's our perception of MJ today, but halfway through the 1991 season, the perception of him was quite different. Michael was in his 7th season in the league. He had already won 2 MVP awards, won 5 straight scoring titles, and had set numerous NBA records, but he was still yet to win his first NBA championship. He was still arguably the league's best player, but due to his team's failure to win it all, several common narratives and stigmas began to tie themselves to Jordan. One of the narratives was that great scorers don't win championships, team players do. At that time in NBA history, a leading scorer and a player leading his team to a championship wasn't something that often went hand in hand. In the 60s, Wilt Chamberlain did all the scoring, but Bill Russell won the championships. In the 80s, Jordan was setting scoring records, while facilitators like Magic and Bird were acquiring all the rings. One analyst leading up to the NBA Finals even went as far as saying Jordan was just a great individual player in a team sport. The 2 best players in the league with 2 very different narratives concerning their playoff careers. For all basketball fans who were alive at the time, they'll remember that this was one of the most hyped NBA matchups the league had ever seen.
This is the NBA on NBC. The 1991 NBA Finals. Today, Game 1 between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Chicago Bulls.
Game 1 underway, and it's a close, high-energy physical game throughout. All the stars came to play. Jordan, as usual, is having a great solo performance, putting up a stat line of 36, 12, and 8, while Magic secures a triple-double and one of many of his career. MJ was on fire down the stretch, and seemed as if he was finally ready to seize the moment on the game's biggest stage. Down to the final plays, less than 20 seconds left, and Magic finds an open Sam Perkins for a 3, which puts the Lakers up by 1 point. On the other end of the floor, Jordan tries to do it himself, drives to the basket, and is met by a crowd of Lakers before it's knocked out of bounds. Still Bulls possession. Game on the line, inbounds pass goes to Jordan. He goes for the win, and it's in and out. The Lakers shoot free throws on the other end, and the game is sealed. With the win, the Lakers had stolen home court advantage from the Bulls and seemed poised to win another championship. At this moment, and for the next few days, several narratives seemed affirmed. Magic's unselfish, facilitating style of play was what won the game and set the tone for the series, while Jordan's hero ball translated into losing once again. It was the same formula and result we had been used to, and it didn't appear as if anything was going to change. Game 2 begins, and for a while, it's another close one. Jordan starts the contest looking to be more of a facilitator. By halftime, it's only a 5-point game, and Jordan hasn't asserted himself much offensively. And then, the third quarter begins. MJ became extremely aggressive offensively, and to simply say that he caught fire would be a massive understatement. He couldn't miss anything, and as a result, the game started turning into a blowout. The Chicago crowd was electric. We were witnessing the first time Jordan had ever taken over an NBA Finals. As Jordan continued his onslaught, you could feel the momentum of the series shifting. Only minutes left in the fourth quarter, Bulls are up by 24 points. Jordan has made 12 straight field goals without a miss. And then, this iconic moment takes place.
To Livingston, Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan. That's 13 consecutive field goals.
This wasn't just a crazy, unnecessarily difficult layup. It was Jordan's 13th straight made field goal on the NBA's biggest stage, which was the final nail in the coffin against the Lakers, which were led by his only competition as the face of the league, Magic Johnson. It was almost as if Jordan was so hot that he felt as if he had to make his shot even more difficult just to challenge himself. The Lakers would never recover from this point, and the Bulls didn't lose a game again in the series. In this game, Jordan had 33 points, 13 assists and 7 rebounds on a ridiculous 83% shooting. If I had to pick a moment where Jordan took the torch from Magic, it would be this moment. In this game, Jordan proved that you can win on a championship level as primarily a scorer, that you don't have to be a big man or a pass-first player in order to win championships. This was the series where Jordan went from simply being the best player in the game to the face of basketball. And if there was a moment or a single image that would symbolize that transition, it would be this one. The year is 2001. Allen Iverson has led his Philadelphia 76ers to a 56-26 record, which was good enough for the best record in the Eastern Conference. Many people forget this aspect, but the 2000 to 2001 76ers were an elite defensive team, with players like Theo Ratliff, Dikembe Mutombo, and Eric Snow. With that being said, not a single 76er outside of Allen Iverson averaged more than 13 points per game that season. Iverson essentially carried the offense for his team, as he led the NBA in scoring with 31.1 points per game and in minutes per game at 42. The impressive season was recognized, and Iverson was awarded the league MVP. Winning the MVP made him the shortest and lightest player to ever win the award. This was part of the appeal and legend of Allen Iverson. In many ways, he was just like one of us. He had his off-the-court issues growing up, but he struggled and fought through those until he achieved something great. He wasn't the strongest or most imposing player out there, yet he still went to battle every single night, and each time he became aggressive and got knocked down, he'd get up, shake it off, and go do it again. It didn't matter that Iverson was the size of a normal human just like us. Despite being surrounded by players towering over him, he showed us that if you go to battle with all your heart, you can stand out amongst the crowd. Heading into the playoffs now, and the 76ers started their playoff run against the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Indiana Pacers. Iverson continued his offensive onslaught, averaging 31.5 points per game over the series, and the 76ers defeated the Pacers 3-1. The semifinals was a matchup against Vince Carter and the Toronto Raptors. It was an epic 7-game series with the two stars giving sensational performances. Despite Carter's best efforts, ultimately Iverson was again too much, averaging 33.7 points and 6.9 assists over the course of the series, including a 54-point showing in Game 2 and a 52-point showing in Game 5. On to the Eastern Conference Finals, which featured a meeting with the strong Milwaukee Bucks, led by 3 stars, Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell. This series would also go to 7 games. But there was no one in the East that was going to stop Iverson this year, as he closed out the series with 46 points in Game 6 and 44 points in Game 7, sending the 76ers to the NBA Finals. It took all the scrapping and battling that Iverson could muster just to earn his Sixers a spot on the NBA's biggest stage. But over in the Western Conference, things were quite different. The defending champion Lakers were on one of the greatest playoff runs in NBA history. In the first round, they swept a loaded Sacramento Kings team in 3 games. Then they swept an as-loaded Portland Trail Blazers in the second round, and then swept the Tim Duncan-led San Antonio Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, setting up an NBA Finals matchup between the juggernaut Los Angeles Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, context for this series is extremely important. Understand the Lakers were seemingly unstoppable at this point. Shaq and Kobe were each averaging roughly 30 points per game over the course of these playoffs. They were entering these NBA Finals as the defending champion, undefeated 11-0 team with their eyes set on not just repeating as champions, but also on becoming the first undefeated team in NBA playoff history. Also understand that the NBA in the early 2000s was kind of similar to the way the NBA has been in recent years, in the sense that the Western Conference was far stronger than the Eastern Conference, and the Lakers had just steamrolled their way through it while the 76ers barely made it. With all of those things considered, almost no one in the basketball world gave the 76ers a shot at even winning a game against these overpowered Lakers, as the Lakers were considered one of the most highly favored teams in NBA Finals history. Essentially, this was David versus Goliath on a basketball court. All that led into June 6, 2001 in Los Angeles. You could feel the excitement and energy as the Laker crowd was eagerly anticipating their team making history. It was supposed to be a breeze for LA, but AI had something different in mind. Shaq had picked up where he left off from last year's NBA Finals, dominating Dikembe Mutombo, Matt Geiger, and everyone else Philly tried to throw at him, en route to Shaq posting an incredible 44 points and 20 rebounds. It was going to take more than that against Allen Iverson though, as he continued his incredible year, scoring in a multitude of ways even while being guarded by an elite defender in Kobe Bryant. The game was back and forth throughout, and ultimately needed an overtime to decide the outcome. Throughout the game, the Lakers had been rotating between defenders on Iverson. Tyronn Lue was actually doing a decent job. Sure, Iverson was scoring a ton of points, but he was also taking a ton of shots to do so. With his stifling, in-your-face defense, he was clearly causing some level of frustration for Iverson. The game was tied on the final possession of the fourth quarter, and Lue actually denied Iverson from getting the ball for a chance to win the game. Into overtime now, and the Lakers are up by 4 points, with a little over 3 minutes left, when iconic voice of the NBA, Marv Albert, has the audacity to say this concerning Lue's defense on Iverson.
Iverson will be dreaming about Tyronn Lue tonight.
I think you've got that backwards, Marv, because by the end of this game, it will probably be Lue that's having nightmares about Iverson for the rest of his life. Lakers up by 3 points now with less than 2 minutes to go, and now Iverson takes over. He drives to the basket, gets fouled, and knocks down both free throws. On the other end, Iverson gets a stop on Tyronn Lue. Philly is in transition, and Iverson makes them pay by hitting a clutch 3 to give the Sixers a 2-point lead. With less than a minute left in overtime, Iverson then made one of the most iconic plays in NBA history. He drove to the right toward the baseline, did a crossover, and then hit a dagger jumper to put the 76ers up by 4 points, and then proceeded to step over the defender, Tyronn Lue. The game was sealed. The 76ers pulled off a monumental upset on the back of Allen Iverson, who had scored 48 points and had 6 steals. His iconic jumper and step over was a great play, but it's famous for much more than that. No single play greater symbolizes the overcoming and incredible person of Allen Iverson. He showed the world that while others couldn't stand up to the all-time great 2001 Lakers, even they didn't have an answer for Allen Iverson on that night. The year is 2003. Kobe Bryant is in the early years of building his legacy, as the Los Angeles Lakers are the defending NBA champions looking for their 4th straight title. Meanwhile, Michael Jordan's legacy has been cemented for years. He turns 40 years old in just 8 days, and his Washington Wizards are battling for a playoff berth, currently sitting in the 8th and final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. All of that is put on hold entering this weekend in February, as Jordan is looking for an enjoyable send-off, participating in his final All-Star game, while for Kobe, it's just another weekend of doing Mamba things. Vince Carter was voted as a starter for the Eastern Conference, and deservedly so with his elite play on the court, but this was all about Jordan's final All-Star game, and so Carter opted to give his starting spot to MJ. Let's take a moment to just marvel at the talent in these starting lineups. In the East, you have 3 of the greatest perimeter scorers of all time, and one of them is the GOAT. Then on the interior, you have one of the greatest defenders ever, and then throw in Jermaine O'Neal, who was a legit star at the time for the Pacers. In the West, you have the scariest front line maybe ever, you have the Mamba, no need to say more, and then you have Stevie Franchise, who was a rising superstar before injuries got in the way. What a time to be a fan of NBA basketball. On a side note, Shaq was basically the greatest sixth man of all time because Chinese voters loved themselves some Yao Ming. Game underway now, and it's actually sloppy to start. The amount of defense being played is surprisingly high by the All-Star Game starters, but the turnovers are also through the roof. Along with the sloppiness of the teams, there was also an incredibly slow start from Jordan, who was looking to assert himself, but missed his first 7 shots of the game. It looked as if we were going to have a weak All-Star game, but things would pick up dramatically. The offense picks up in the second quarter with much more open basketball, but a lot of that had to do with a relaxed defense. Halfway through the second quarter, the defense picks up again, and the cause is clear to commentator Mike Fratello.
You know why the game has settled back down again? Because Michael Jordan's on the floor is one of the reasons. Kobe Bryant for the other team. Both of those guys bring a sense of order to the game.
Jordan and Kobe played the first quarter, and their intensity kept the team's defenses up. When they sat, the game became more relaxed. When they returned, it was intense again. The 2 greatest players in this contest were also the 2 that would set the tone and leave their imprint on this game as a whole. Into the second half, and Jordan begins to find his groove. Then at the free throw line, he became the all-time leader in all-star scoring.
2 minutes left in the fourth quarter now, and Jordan continues his strong play down the stretch, with this incredibly tough shot in the heart of the defense, which makes it an 8-point game. The West was far from done and responded with a series of baskets in the paint and stops on the defensive end. The East is up by 1 point with only about 20 seconds remaining when Jordan drives to the basket and gets his shot blocked. Kobe secures the rebound. The Mamba then begins his attack and is fouled from behind by Jordan. Now Kobe is at the free throw line with the game on the line. We all know he's automatic, right? Not this time. And now Jordan's letting him hear about it. Must make free throw for Kobe. And he buries it, tying the game at 120. Out of the timeout, and now it's MJ's turn with a solid defender and Sean Marion right on him. He goes for the fadeaway and comes up short. We're going to overtime. If you thought the theme between Jordan and Kobe was going to change in overtime, think again. This is where the heir apparent asserted himself. Kobe was leading the charge for the West, scoring and assisting in all but one of the West's baskets in overtime. Collectively, the East was playing well too, and all this set up yet another opportunity for MJ to make his mark on the game's final moments. Game is tied. Jason Kidd gets the ball to Jordan, who's got Sean Marion draped all over him. He drives to the baseline and hits an incredibly tough fadeaway to put the East on top. The crowd is ecstatic, his teammates are loving it, and all seems right in the basketball universe, as Jordan once again appears to have made an iconic game winner, this time in his final All-Star game, in what is a beautiful send-off to the greatest player of all time. But there's still 3 seconds left on the clock, and on the opposing team, there's one man who's aspired to be better than Jordan throughout his entire playing career. One man who's just too damn competitive to simply lay over and let Jordan have this moment all to himself. One man who will do whatever it takes to win, regardless of who it affects and what it disrupts. Inbounds pass goes to Kobe. He shoots a contested corner three and is fouled. The East is dumbfounded by the call, and even by the look on Kobe's face, it appears he might have got away with something. When you look at the replay, you can see that Kobe really put his body out on the line. But is this a foul? I don't know. You tell me. But what I do know is that Kobe did everything he could to sell it. 2-point game and 3 free throws coming for the Mamba. Kobe barely makes the first one. Second free throw is up, and Kobe misses that one. Now the real pressure is on. Immediately after this miss, Jordan is in Kobe's ear now, trying to get into his head to make him miss the next free throw. Must make here, and Jordan continues to talk literally up until the moment Kobe releases the ball. He buries the free throw, tying the game, and then turns around to say something to MJ, and MJ gives him this look. I can't tell you how much money I would give to hear all of the words exchanged in this epic sequence. East calls a timeout with 1 second left. It's a catch and shoot situation. You know who the ball is going to. Jason Kidd inbounds to Jordan, but this time Sean Marion is ready for it and blocks his shot. With the buzzer sounding in a tie, this made this game the only All-Star game in NBA history to go to a double overtime. Heading into this second overtime, Jordan was a near 40-year-old man who had just logged 36 minutes in an exhibition game, and this is taking place in the middle of the season, where the Wizards are sitting in the 8th spot with Jordan fighting to lead his team to the playoffs. Heavy minutes was not something Jordan was planning on doing. The plan may have been to give him a rest and bring him back to close the final few minutes, but that would not end up happening. Because after Garnett scores on the first possession, Fratello once again sounds like a genius, saying this.
If I was Isaiah Thomas right now, I'd really be worried about this team on the floor. I know he's trying to give guys minutes in the game, but the Western team that's on the floor has been out there. They're warmed up, they're active. You're bringing a couple guys in cold. You're very small right now. This could be a quick 8-zip, 9-0 burst for the Western Conference to start this next overtime.
And that is exactly what happened. Kevin Garnett led the charge, getting a series of baskets, and then Kobe iced the game, hitting a 3 and pushing it to a double-digit lead for the West, which the East would never recover from. The final score ended up being a 155-145 victory for the West, and Kevin Garnett would be named the game's MVP. In my opinion, this is the most legendary All-Star game of all time, and not because it was necessarily the best All-Star game from a pure basketball standpoint, but because of the fact that it was a great game to go along with all the icons and all the symbolism. We got to see MJ and Kobe battle it out, while appreciating the similarities between the two greats. It also symbolized a passing of the torch between these two legends. It's January 22nd, 2006, and the Los Angeles Lakers are preparing for battle with the Toronto Raptors. Just a month before this game had taken place, Kobe had dropped 62 points in only 3 quarters of play against the eventual Western Conference champion, the Dallas Mavericks. According to Dallas's Dirk Nowitzki, Kobe easily could have had 80 that night if he wanted to and simply played the 4th quarter. At the end of the 3rd quarter of the Dallas game, Kobe's former teammate and assistant coach Brian Shaw encouraged Kobe to go back out there for the 4th quarter and try to get 80 points, a feat that, at the time, no one other than Wilt Chamberlain had ever accomplished. But Kobe told him, "Nah, we're up 30. When the time is right and the team needs it, I'll do it." Which brings us back to January 22nd, 2006. At the time, the talk of the NBA was about a young LeBron James who dropped 51 points on the Jazz the night before, and the talk of the sports world was about the NFL, as both the AFC and NFC championship games were played that morning. But regardless, Kobe was prepared to be the headline story of all of tomorrow's newspapers. Now, January 22nd was actually Kobe's grandfather's birthday, and his grandfather passed away just a few years before this night. Due to this, Kobe's grandmother was looking to do something different that night, and decided to attend Kobe's game at Staples Center. According to Kobe, his grandma had never attended a single game of Kobe's during his NBA career, because her nerves couldn't handle it. But this night, she decided to tough it out, and witness the first and only professional game of Kobe's that she would ever see. Now, Kobe was very close with his grandmother, and of his family members, he said that he and his grandma probably had the most in common from a personality standpoint. Given how she meant a lot to him, and how she was probably mourning that day without her husband, Kobe wanted to give her a great performance to remember. It wouldn't be easy, because the Lakers were heading into that evening with a 21-19 record and had lost 8 of their last 14 games. At this point, as a struggling franchise, the team really needed some optimism or a burst of energy injected back into the organization, and several minutes into the game, it appeared it wasn't coming anytime soon. Kobe was doing what he could to keep the team in the game, scoring in a variety of ways, but Toronto had a very good offense, and they had a 7-point lead by the end of the 1st quarter. The frustrating team play continued for the Lakers, and despite Kobe's 26 points, Toronto was dominating the game, leading by 14 points with momentum completely in their favor.
Welcome back to the Lakers halftime report presented by Jack in the Box, and the Purple and Gold in danger of losing their 3rd straight game, trailing the Raptors 63-49 at the break. So, Jack, let me ask you this. They're down 14. Is that a deficit that Kobe Bryant alone can overcome?
No, he can't.
You guys know where things go from here. Toronto gets the lead up to 17 before Kobe makes his first strike with just under 11 minutes left in the 3rd quarter, and it was a complete Black Mamba onslaught from that point on. If you watched this game closely or seen Jimmy High Roller's terrific video on this game, then you know that unlike popular belief, it wasn't just Jalen Rose who got torched by Kobe, but really it was the whole team, and first and foremost among them was Morris Peterson. They threw just about every defender and every kind of defense they could at Kobe, but it didn't matter, as he was in the same zone that the Dallas defense had experienced just a month earlier. Kobe had 53 points at the end of the 3rd quarter. At this point in his career, Kobe had got 50 or more points through just 3 quarters of play on 5 separate occasions. But since this game was so close, this was the first and only instance where Kobe would actually play in the 4th quarter. To start the 4th quarter, Kobe missed his first 2 shots, but on the second one, he gets gouged in the eye by Mo Peterson, which wasn't the first time Kobe was hit around the face and it wasn't called. A furious Mamba gave the referee an earful, and he gives him a technical foul as a result. It's almost like you could hear Kobe's thoughts in that moment.
That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
Kobe starts up the onslaught again, hitting just about every shot from everywhere on the court. As he continues his fiery shooting, the attention of the game starts drifting away from the scoreboard and towards Kobe's point total. With his 63rd point, he set a new personal career high. With his 72nd point, he passed Elgin Baylor to become the highest scoring Laker in franchise history. With his 79th point, he became the 2nd highest single game scorer in NBA history, and the highest game ever captured on film. At this point, the game was sealed, and there was a couple instances where Phil Jackson could have taken Kobe out of the game, but instead, he kept him in, and from the free throw line, Kobe achieved the iconic number that's become such a staple of his legacy.
And an 81-point game.
He scored 81 points on 28 of 46 shooting, and what's probably even more impressive than the 81 points was his 55 points in the second half alone, which is also the second greatest in NBA history. I'm pretty sure that Kobe's grandmother was very pleased with her first Laker game. In 2016, 10 years after the event took place, former Toronto Raptors coach Sam Mitchell was asked how he felt about Kobe after all these years, and without hesitation, he said, "I hate him." A couple days later, Kobe was told about Mitchell's comment, and he simply laughed it off and sincerely said, "Thank you for the hate. I appreciate that. Truly, I love that." Obviously, the comment from Mitchell was somewhat tongue-in-cheek, considering the fact that Mitchell and Kobe had very respectful and appreciative interactions afterwards. But as far as Mitchell's disgust at the bad memories that Kobe's mere presence gave him, well, I'm pretty sure that's a feeling a lot of competitors had towards Kobe, and not just Mitchell. It's June of 1992, and the defending champion Chicago Bulls are coming off of a tough Eastern Conference Finals where they defeated the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6 games. Meanwhile, the Portland Trail Blazers had just defeated the Utah Jazz in 6 games as well, sending themselves to the NBA Finals for the second time in 3 seasons. This all set up a colossal showdown between the two best teams throughout the year, who were led by the top 2 players in that season's MVP race, Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. They played the same position, they were similar in stature, similar in athletic ability, were almost the same age, and were both the leader of their teams. So naturally, amidst the hype of these NBA Finals, these two superstars were being compared to one another constantly among the fans and amongst the media. Maybe the biggest talking point that was consistently being repeated was that Clyde Drexler was just like Michael Jordan, except that Clyde was the better three-point shooter. Needless to say that this is the kind of narrative that Michael Jordan has been known to take personally. But whether or not MJ liked it, there was certainly some merit to it. Throughout the regular season, Drexler shot 338 three-pointers and made 33.7% of his attempts. Jordan, on the other hand, shot less than a third of that, attempting only 100 three-pointers throughout the season, and he made just 27% of those attempts. Anyone who considered Drexler as the better perimeter shooter were completely justified, but Jordan thought otherwise. On the eve of Game 1 of the NBA Finals, Jordan was being interviewed and was asked about the comparison between him and Drexler in terms of three-point shooting. Jordan went on to say that three-point shooting isn't a part of his game that he focuses on, and said that he would be a much better three-point shooter if he focused on it more. And then, as a direct quote, was the bombshell statement, "Clyde is a better three-point shooter than I choose to be." This was a spicy quote for sure, but as far as we could tell, that seemed to be the end of it, and we assumed both players would bring the skills we've come to expect from them. Well, now it's game day.
This is the NBA on NBC. The 1992 NBA Finals. Tonight, Game 1 between the Portland Trail Blazers and the Chicago Bulls.
The Windy City crowd was absolutely electric, but even they had no idea what they were about to witness. The game begins with Jordan looking to be somewhat of a distributor and play within the flow of the offense. Clyde also appears to be having a strong start of his own, looking to justify the comparisons between the two superstars. But soon after is when we notice something different. Jordan's first shot attempt is a three-pointer. It's off, and the game goes on. Shortly after, Jordan begins to find his stride offensively. But a couple plays later, he once again attempts a three-pointer right in Drexler's face. Given that it wasn't within rhythm and that it was his second attempt in such a short amount of time, it seemed pretty clear that the three-point comparison was something that was still in the back of Jordan's mind. Halfway through the first quarter now, and MJ once again lets it fly.
The field. Jordan again from three-point land. Most unusual to see Michael bombing away. That's his third three-point attempt.
At this point, Jordan begins to catch fire, hitting an array of jumpers, as the Bulls begin to seize the momentum. A couple minutes later, MJ hits his second three off of Scotty's pass, and his third three shortly after that. He closes out the first quarter completely on fire and making the game look easy, finishing with 18 of the Bulls' 33 first quarter points. With momentum in the Bulls' favor, Jordan took an extensive rest and didn't return until it was halfway through the second quarter. But 6 minutes is all Jordan would need to make history. MJ immediately continues his abuse of Drexler, scoring on him in the post. Moments later, Clyde tries to take back some momentum with a three-pointer, but to no avail. Bulls rebound, and Jordan goes on to return the favor by draining a three of his own. It seemed very personal at this point.
With that 4 3-pointer from MJ, he tied the NBA record for the most 3-pointers ever made in one half of an NBA Finals game. The Blazers called a timeout, but a simple stop in action wasn't going to cool off the best player in the world, and as soon as play continued, he resumed his dominance. He then made his 5th 3-pointer, again directly in front of Drexler, securing the record as his own for the most made threes in a finals half. You could see the shock in the faces of the Portland Trailblazers. This was a guy who made only 27 3-pointers over the course of an 82-game regular season, and now they're witnessing him breaking 3-point records on the game's biggest stage. If Jordan hadn't completely made his point yet to Clyde and the rest of the world about the 3-point shooting comparison, then this next sequence surely sealed it.
The steal by Pippen. Drexler for 3, air ball. Here's Jordan for 3, yes! Did you see that look? Michael indicating he can't believe it.
With his 6th 3-pointer, he had now tied the NBA record for the most threes in an NBA Finals game, and it only took him one half. With that iconic shot, he also scored his 35th point, which is still an NBA record to this day for the most points ever scored in a half of an NBA Finals game. Pretty incredible stuff when you consider the fact that he didn't even play in 6 minutes of the first half. The Bulls had a commanding lead at the end of the first half, and with the lead reaching nearly 30 points early into the third quarter, Jordan and the Bulls simply cruised from that point on, as he finished the game with 39 points and a 122-89 victory. Marv Albert said Jordan's shrug meant he couldn't believe what he just did. Magic Johnson has his own explanation as to what Jordan meant to say with his famous shrug, and it may or may not be accurate. But for me, given the full context of the comparisons with Clyde Drexler, the chatter about his 3-point shooting, the statement by Jordan the day before, and the fact that he just broke the 3-point record immediately after Drexler's airball, I always personally interpreted it as Jordan's way of saying, "I tried to tell you." The Last Dance was incredible to watch, but I was kinda disappointed during this bit of the documentary, as I felt like they left out some key details of this incredibly iconic performance. Hopefully this video helped elaborate upon it. This game alone is enough for me to tell people not so fast when they act like Jordan couldn't thrive in this modern 3-point shooting era. How do you think Jordan would do in the modern era of the long ball? And was this game the greatest hold my beer moment in NBA history? Let me know in the comments below.
The world is a much different place than it was 10 years ago, as there is more constant information at our fingertips than ever before. Any single play, action, or moment can go absolutely viral in an instant. Within a matter of minutes, the entire sports world can be made aware of a significant event, and before you know it, everyone is chiming in with their thoughts and emotions. But NBA basketball hasn't always been this way. Many things have happened in years past that were jaw-dropping developments, and if those same developments were to take place in today's world, they would absolutely break the internet. One of the most shocking and insane events of basketball history took place nearly 4 decades ago. On November 9th, 1984, the two favorites in the Eastern Conference were meeting up for their first matchup of the regular season, the defending champion Boston Celtics and the previous champions, the Philadelphia 76ers. At this point in history, Boston and Philadelphia had one of the fiercest ongoing rivalries, as the 76ers represented the old guard with their battle-tested veterans, and the Celtics were the youthful rising power in the conference. Every time these teams met up, an epic battle was expected, not just because of the immense talent on both sides, but also because of the intense physical nature of both teams, and neither side was willing to back down. Just recently before this game was a preseason game. The Celtics' Cedric Maxwell and Phillies' Moses Malone got into a violent fight, which was soon followed up with another intense fight between Larry Bird and Mark Ivoroni, which resulted in ejections. Again, this was the intensity of the two teams meeting in a preseason game. Now, this upcoming game on November 9th was nationally televised and was one of the more highly anticipated regular season games of NBA history. Not just for the rivalry, the star power, and the fact that they had won the previous 2 championships, but it was also for the fact that both of these teams were undefeated. The 2 faces of the Eastern Conference, Larry Bird and Julius Erving, found themselves in a heated individual battle. Anytime 2 superstars clash on the basketball court is sure to garner attention, but it's something else entirely for those 2 stars to get into an actual heated fight. Now, up to this point, both of these superstars actually got along pretty well as friends and highly respected one another's abilities. You wouldn't know it though, based on how things unfolded on the court. The game was now underway, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, the physical intensity was extremely high. Now, at this time in NBA history, only 2 referees were assigned to work each game. Famous referee Dick Bavetta was one of them for this game, but he was a relatively new NBA referee at this point, so because of this, he was assigned to ref the game with a more experienced veteran official, Jack Madden. Early into the second half, the Boston Celtics guard Dennis Johnson dove after a loose ball and accidentally slid into Jack Madden's legs. This collision broke the veteran official's leg on impact, and as a result, he had to be carried out of the game on a stretcher. And now, the less experienced Dick Bavetta was left to officiate the game by himself. There were absolutely no reserve referees waiting in the wings. In an attempt to gain control of a chaotic basketball game, Bavetta pulled both of the team's head coaches into a huddle and asked them to keep themselves and their team on their best behavior, since he was all alone to ref the game. Both coaches agreed, but only with their words and not with their actions, as Bavetta had to give out numerous technical fouls after the huddle. Only a couple minutes into the second half, Bavetta ejected Philadelphia's head coach Billy Cunningham after he gave him what he thought was his second technical foul. The thing is, Jack Madden had given Philly's head coach a technical foul in the first half, but then decided to rescind the tech and gave it to a Philadelphia player instead, which means Dick Bavetta wrongly ejected a coach with only 1 technical foul. After a couple minutes, Bavetta learned of this error and had to send a staff member to get Cunningham out of the locker room so he could continue to coach the game. To put it simply, this game was already a messy circus, and emotions were obviously extremely high, but no one knew just how much worse things were about to get. It was a close game halfway into the third, but on an individual level, Larry Bird was destroying Julius Erving on both ends of the court. With 6 minutes left in the third quarter, Larry had a whopping 42 points on 74% shooting, compared to Erving, who only had 6 points on a terrible 23% shooting. And of course, you guys know Larry Bird. He was letting Erving hear about it every step of the way, trash-talking him as he buried jumper after jumper. At the rate Bird was going, a 70-point night was looking like a very realistic outcome, all while Erving was experiencing one of the worst performances of his entire career. Understandably, this whole process was incredibly frustrating to Erving. So when the 2 stars were battling for position down the court, Erving got right up against his body when Bird swung his elbow towards Erving in what appeared to be an attempt to clear some space. Larry was whistled for an offensive foul for the elbow, and he was irate at the call and started letting the referee hear about it. According to Julius Erving, he extended his arm towards Bird in an attempt to restrain him from the referee. Larry didn't like that very much, and before you know it, a gesture that was made in an attempt to keep the peace turned into both players literally choking each other. After the 2 stars had each other by the throat, Larry then took the first swing at Erving, and it was on. Moses Malone and Charles Barkley of the 76ers grabbed a hold of Bird from behind and held him in place with a headlock as Erving repeatedly punched the trapped Bird in the face. By the time the chaos had finally been put to a halt, both players had been ejected out of the game. Eventually, each star was fined $7,500 apiece for their part in the brawl. The Celtics went on to win the game 130-119 and remained undefeated. If you feel like the NBA is the same today as it was in the 80s, all you need to know in order to change your mind is that neither of these players were suspended for this vicious altercation, and Irving went as far as continuously punching a defenseless player in the face, and yet neither of them missed a game. Bird was even playing against the Washington Bullets the very next day on the second game of a back-to-back. Now take a moment to imagine something like this happening in the modern NBA. The last two championship teams meeting in the biggest game of the year, both teams being undefeated, and two of the biggest stars in the league get into an incredibly gruesome fight. It would kind of be like Giannis and LeBron getting into a brutal fight, and naturally, social media would be exploding at the event. Imagine if LeBron was consistently punching a defenseless Giannis in the face, while Anthony Davis held Giannis in place. And then on top of that, LeBron doesn't even get suspended. Obviously, this analogy doesn't totally work, as they weren't the last two champions, and they were never close to having an undefeated matchup this season. Even by the most crazy hypothetical modern comparison, it still doesn't match up to the gravity of that fight in 1984. In some ways, it really was like the Wild West in the 1980s. Now here's the thing, these two legends had to meet up again in the regular season just 1 month later. This time, on December 12, 1984, the rematch took place in the 76ers home building in Philadelphia. Obviously, everyone watching was waiting to see if there was yet another fight in store for Larry Legend and Dr. J. For the most part, everything was pretty cordial between the stars. But if Irving was hoping that this would be his revenge game where he would get the upper hand on Bird, then he was left awfully disappointed. Once again, Larry methodically picked Julius apart as he once again dominated the matchup, dropping 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists on 57% shooting, compared to Irving, who only dropped 16 points on 39% shooting from the field. At this point, Boston had firmly established their mental edge over the 76ers, and when these two contenders later met up in the Eastern Conference Finals, Bird once again had the upper hand, as the Celtics comfortably eliminated the 76ers in just 5 games. Although Irving might have dealt the most punishment to Bird when they physically fought, Bird never stopped abusing Irving that season in terms of the actual basketball. Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, widely recognized as the two greatest players since the turn of the millennium. Despite being the greatest players, these two never really shared a rivalry as they played in separate conferences and unfortunately never met up in the NBA Finals. But with that being said, there was one special week of NBA history where these two MVP candidates were competing to display the greatest show at the basketball mecca, Madison Square Garden. So who would be crowned the King of New York, LeBron or Kobe? To get an answer to that, let's take a dive back into this week in history. It's February 2nd, 2009, and the 37-9 Lakers are set to square off with the 21-25 Knicks, who were actually riding high on a 3-game winning streak. Although Kobe and the Lakers were enjoying the best record in the Western Conference, there was also a very somber mood to this team, as their previous game was against the Memphis Grizzlies, and in that contest, Kobe fell on Andrew Bynum's leg, severely injuring the star center, which was obviously a massive blow to the Lakers' championship hopes. After the loss to the Celtics in the previous NBA Finals, Kobe spoke about how Andrew's rebounding and rim protection was missed, and likely played a part in the Lakers losing the series. So to then see Bynum go down again almost felt as if we were seeing the Lakers' championship hopes go up in flames once again, and you could see it on the Mamba's face. The morning of this matchup with the Knicks, news broke to the Lakers that Bynum had suffered a torn MCL and was likely to miss the rest of the season. With this massive blow to their confidence and psyche, Kobe took it upon himself as a leader to re-energize his teammates and convince them that come hell or high water, they're still winning this championship. Leading up to tip-off, Kobe was laser-focused and barely spoke to anyone, and that level of concentration would pay off on the court. Kobe came out hot and seemingly couldn't miss anything. A desperate New York squad threw all kinds of different defenders at him, like Quentin Richardson, Wilson Chandler, and even David Lee took some shots at him as well. But it didn't matter, the result was the same each time. No one was stopping the Mamba on a mission this night. The shots he was hitting had an insane degree of difficulty that was leaving the crowd oohing and aahing. As the game was beginning to get out of hand, the New York crowd had lost interest in the Knicks' chances to win the game, and instead, they were cheering on Kobe as he was making history. With his 56th point, he became the highest scoring road player in the history of Madison Square Garden, eclipsing Michael Jordan's iconic double nickel game. When Kobe scored his 61st point, he became the highest scoring player in Madison Square Garden history, surpassing Bernard King's 60-point performance in 1984. As a triumphant Kobe went to the bench, he was showered with MVP chants from an appreciative New York crowd, which only a few players can ever say they've accomplished. On the evening, Kobe finished with 61 points and 3 assists on 76.6 true shooting percentage, and the Lakers won the game 126-117. The Knicks didn't have very long to mourn their embarrassing defeat, because their very next game was just 2 nights later against LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron had his own interesting story heading into this New York matchup. James had a massive free agency decision to make in the foreseeable future, and at the time, the New York Knicks appeared to be the favorite to land the king, and for good reasons. LeBron was doing just about as much flirting with the Knicks organization that he could have without getting fined for tampering. He was famously known to be a New York Yankees fan, even going as far as wearing their merchandise to a Cleveland Indians game. LeBron had also been very vocal about the fact that Madison Square Garden was his favorite place to play basketball. So knowing these things, anytime LeBron played at MSG, it was a must-see event, as you expected to see the best from an auditioning LeBron. But having this matchup come so shortly after Kobe Bryant's record-breaking performance, we all knew that LeBron had a little extra motivation on this night. When the game began, LeBron was doing just about everything on the court, but you could also tell that his mindset was just a little different, as he was extremely aggressive offensively and was quick to let it fly from the perimeter, which was not his usual style at this point in his career. With that being said, LeBron was scorching hot and was destroying many of the same defenders that Kobe lit up just a couple nights earlier. To end the first quarter, LeBron hit a jumper at the buzzer, which gave him more points through the first quarter than Kobe had through his, and the New York crowd knew then that they were in for another long night. As the game continued, LeBron didn't let up with his efficient sniping, but whenever he wasn't scoring, he was also controlling the game as the floor general, finding his perimeter shooters whenever he drew most of the attention. Again, there wasn't much the Knicks could do to slow the superstar down, and as the game was approaching its end, LeBron was drawing close to history of his own. With this rebound in the final few seconds, LeBron secured his 10th board, which gave him the historic triple-double. He finished the game with 52 points, 11 assists, and 10 rebounds on 62.9 true shooting percentage. At this point, LeBron became only the 5th player in NBA history to ever achieve a 50-point triple-double, and this was also the only one to ever take place in Madison Square Garden. Unfortunately, these historic records for LeBron only lasted about 2 days, because the NBA went back and reviewed LeBron's 9th rebound, which he got with only 39 seconds left in the game, and they ultimately decided to take it away and credit it to his teammate Ben Wallace instead. Sorry for the poor quality, but this is the best version of the rebound that I can find. Personally, I don't see how they're justified in taking this rebound away from LeBron, considering how Wallace never seemed to have fully secured the loose ball before LeBron grabs hold of it. Regardless of how we personally feel about it, LeBron's official stat line now stands as 52 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds. This week of basketball should be remembered as one of the greatest of NBA history, as it not only featured 2 all-time great performances, but it was also about the incredible stories revolving around these performances. Kobe's leadership would become fruitful as his Lakers would go on to win the NBA championship regardless of the devastating Andrew Bynum injury. And as for LeBron, he would later beat out Kobe Bryant for the league MVP award, and he wouldn't go on to join the Knicks after all, but instead disappointed both New York and Cleveland fans when he famously decided to take his talents to South Beach. Unfortunately, we never got the rivalry we wanted so badly between these two legends, but at the very least, this week in New York was a small highlight of the greats competing against one another for the title of the King of New York.
What are the greatest Game 7s in NBA history? Today, I put together my list, but let me be clear,
this is just my list, and I could see this group being ranked in so many different ways, especially when you consider how many honorable mentions there are. With that being said, nobody's list will look the exact same, so let me know in the comments how your list differs from mine. Let's get into it. Number 7, Blazers and Lakers in the 2000 Western Conference Finals. At the time, many people believed that the winner of this game would be the eventual winner of the NBA Finals, as the Western Conference was significantly stronger than the East during this era. In a way, this game has become the symbolic representation of the beginning of the Shaq and Kobe dynasty, as the iconic lob between the two late in the game remains as one of the most iconic moments of basketball history. Unlike just about every other game on this list, this Game 7 wasn't all that close throughout, considering how Portland held a significant lead throughout most of the game, with the Lakers appearing a bit sluggish out of the gates. But inevitably, that was all set up for one of the greatest playoff comebacks of all time, as the Lakers found themselves down by 15 points early in the fourth quarter. As guys like Kobe, Shaq, and Brian Shaw started heating up, Los Angeles was locking down Portland defensively, as the Blazers went ice cold, missing 13 straight shot attempts during the heart of the fourth quarter. By the time Portland finally started to figure out their offense, it was too late, as the Lakers had all the momentum, capped off with the iconic moment that put the game away. Number 6, Hawks and Celtics in the 1988 Eastern Conference Semifinals. This is easily one of the greatest solo duels that the league has ever seen, as Dominique Wilkins of the Atlanta Hawks was extremely hot, while Larry Legend refused to be denied down the stretch. To this day, this game is famously referred to as the Duel. The human highlight film was basically unstoppable right from the opening tip-off, as he was efficiently hitting everything from the field, leading the offense for his team. Larry waited until the fourth quarter to really start heating up though, as both superstars continued to trade difficult baskets. Wilkins scored 16 points in the final quarter, but Bird proceeded to show his legendary clutch gene as well, as he scored 20 points in the fourth quarter alone on a remarkable 9 of 10 shooting from the field. The lead continued to go back and forth in the final minutes, and it all came down to one possession. Dominique had a chance to tie the game with a 3-point shot, but Danny Ainge wisely intentionally fouled Wilkins, forcing him to shoot 2 free throws instead. Wilkins made the first and then proceeded to miss the second on purpose, but the Hawks couldn't recover possession and the Celtics won the game 118 to 116. On the night, Wilkins dropped 47 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists, while his teammate Doc Rivers had 16 points and 18 assists. Larry Bird finished with 34 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds, as he added this epic performance to his already legendary resume. Number 5, Celtics and Lakers in the 2010 NBA Finals. If you don't like defensive slugfests, then you probably won't appreciate this game being on the list. During the Lakers and Celtics rivalry days of this era, physicality was always a defining aspect of these matches, and with that being the case, the refs basically put away their whistles for much of the 7th game, and let the players decide the outcome for themselves. Thanks to this mentality from the refs and players, Game 7 of the 2010 Finals may have been the most physical basketball game that I've ever seen since the turn of the millennium. Kobe Bryant famously shot only 6 of 24 from the field this night, but the thing is, almost everyone shot poorly, as Pau Gasol was 6 of 16, Ron Artest was 7 of 18, Paul Pierce was 5 of 15, and Ray Allen was only 3 of 14. Again, all of that translates to an extremely ugly, low-scoring game, but it was ugly in all the right ways, as the defense and brutality of the matchup took center stage. One of the key aspects of this physical game was the rebounding, and both Kobe and Gasol rose to the occasion, as the Mamba snagged 15 rebounds while Gasol got 18 of his own. In the final few minutes of this close battle, things got really exciting, as Kobe, Gasol, and Artest each made their own clutch shots down the stretch, while the Celtics made big shots of their own, doing everything they could to prevent the game from slipping away. In the final seconds, the Lakers got a much-needed stop, as they executed their revenge over their rivals, in what is the most recent chapter of the Lakers vs. Celtics rivalry. Number 4, Celtics and Lakers in the 1969 NBA Finals. At this point in history, the Lakers had been eliminated in the finals by the Celtics over and over again, but the Lakers had just acquired Wilt Chamberlain to play alongside of Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, so the players and organization finally believed they were the better team than Boston, and were poised to win a championship. The Lakers owner Jack Kent Cooke was so confident that his team would win that he ordered thousands of balloons to be hanging from the rafters, with a text "World Champion Lakers" printed onto them. When Game 7 began, it was anything but easy for Los Angeles. Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West both showed up with their best efforts, putting up monstrous stat lines for their teams. Unfortunately for LA, Chamberlain had to leave the game in the final few minutes due to his leg injury. Jerry West was then forced to take on more of the load offensively. As for the Celtics, not only was Bill Russell securing 21 rebounds, but the entire team had a well-rounded attack, as 3 of Russell's teammates, Havlicek, Bryant, and Jones, scored at least 20 points. The game was incredibly close and suspenseful down the stretch, and Jerry West proved why he was known as Mr. Clutch, as he dropped a 40-point triple-double in the deciding game. Ultimately, the Hall of Fame loaded Celtics were just too much, as they narrowly won the game 108-106. Jerry West might have been named the Finals MVP, but I don't think Russell minded, as he earned his 11th championship ring. Number 3, the 76ers and Celtics in the 1981 Eastern Conference Finals. This was an epic matchup between the 2 best players in the Eastern Conference, Larry Bird and Julius Erving. At one point, the Celtics were down 3-1 in the series, yet they had stormed back to force a 7th game, as Larry Bird was determined to win his first championship ring. With a trip to the NBA Finals on the line, both of these extremely talented teams put forth their best efforts. In total, 7 Hall of Famers were competing in this fantastic game. Once again, this game was a prime example of referees putting away their whistles and letting the team settle the score for themselves. The game was fast-paced, but it was also quite intense from a physical standpoint. Neither team was lacking in the energy department, as the hustle plays were clearly on display from both sides. This game was also a block party, as a total of 16 shots were rejected on this evening, as no one was willing to give up any easy baskets. There were constant lead changes throughout the contest, and the energy in the building was some of the best playoff atmosphere that I've ever seen. Larry Bird was a beast defensively, and the Celtics needed a couple of clutch stops down the stretch. The game was tied at 89 with only a minute remaining, when Larry got a crucial stop on Darryl Dawkins. Bird then got the rebound and stormed down the court, where he hit the game-winning basket, in what was one of the most clutch sequences in playoff history. On the night, Dr. J had 23 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 4 blocks, while Larry Bird got the win with 23 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 steals. Number 2, 76ers vs. Raptors in the 2019 Eastern Conference Semifinals. Although this game is remembered fondly for the iconic final shot, many people forget just how great this game was leading up to that moment. The shot making in the fourth quarter was insane, as both teams shot at least 50% in the quarter. No one was willing to go down without a fight, and in the final 8 minutes alone, there were 3 different ties and 4 different lead changes, as clutch performers like Jimmy Butler and Kawhi Leonard were providing some late-game heroics. In those last 12 minutes, Butler scored 10 points, while Kawhi poured in 15 of his own in that window. With only 4 seconds left in the game, Kawhi Leonard did his thing, hitting one of the most famous game winners in NBA history. To this day, it's the only game-winning buzzer beater in the 7th game of the playoffs. Quite the legendary way to end a legendary game. On the night, Leonard had 41 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals, leading his team down the road to an NBA championship. Before we look at the top spot, here is my long list of honorable mentions. Should any of these have made the top 7? Let me know below. Number 1, Cavaliers vs. Warriors in the 2016 NBA Finals. Was there ever really a question about which game would take the number 1 spot? As far as the magnitude of the moment, it really doesn't get any bigger than this. The Warriors and Cavaliers were in the middle of their rivalry, as the teams were in a finals rematch for the NBA championship. Along with that, Golden State was looking to finish off their 73-9 record-breaking season, and a victory likely would have earned them the title of the greatest team in NBA history. On the other hand, you had the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had come back from a 3-1 deficit, and with a victory, they would achieve the greatest upset in NBA Finals history. None of the prior 6 games in the series had been all that close, but obviously that wouldn't be the case for Game 7. The intensity was there throughout, as neither team wanted to be on the wrong side of history. From the beginning to the end, this contest was a complete nail-biter for both fan bases, as the game had a grand total of 20 separate lead changes. With about 1 minute remaining, the Cavs proceeded to have 2 of the most famous plays in basketball history. The first was the remarkable chase-down block by LeBron James, and the second was the clutch 3-point shot from Kyrie Irving to give the Cavaliers the lead. Ultimately, the Cavs held on to win this game with a final score of 93-89, as LeBron James became only the 3rd player to have a triple-double in a 7th game of the NBA Finals. If you followed my channel for a while, maybe you've noticed that I tend to go on imagination overload, as I continuously ask myself what could have happened if these situations played out differently. Today, I'm looking at this question through the lens of some of the greatest performances of NBA history, specifically the all-time great performances that were cut short for one reason or another. What if those players remained in the game until the final buzzer sounded? What kind of records would we be looking at today, and how would it change our perceptions of those legends? Today, I'll do my best to answer that as we marvel at what was and what could have been. The majority of this video is dominated by 2 players specifically, and the first of those is Kobe Bryant. Kobe was known to heat up quickly as an offensive player, and although that attribute translated to many historic evenings, several of those never even saw a 4th quarter. Kobe had 5 games in his career where he scored over 50 points through the first 3 quarters, and in only one of those games did he actually play in the 4th quarter, and unsurprisingly, that happened to be the night he scored 81 points. The first time he did that was on January 14, 2002 against the Memphis Grizzlies. Shaq had been suspended for several games for basically trying to end Brad Miller on the spot. Fortunately, Shaq is more accurate with his free throws than his punches. Without the big fella available down low, Kobe took it upon himself to carry the Lakers offensively, and that's exactly what he did, as the Mamba was blazing throughout, dropping 56 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists on 61.8% shooting. The Lakers were up by 39 points at the end of the 3rd quarter, so he sat out the entirety of the 4th. Considering how Kobe had 53 points through 3 quarters of the 81 game, at the very least, he had a chance of reaching 80 points on this evening as well. The second instance was February 12, 2003 against the Denver Nuggets. Once again, Shaq was not available during this stretch, so Kobe had to lead the Lakers offensively. This was actually the 3rd game of Kobe's famous streak of 9 straight 40-point games, and this was probably the most impressive. Through 3 quarters of play, Kobe had amassed a total of 51 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals on 53.6% shooting. Due to this one-man onslaught, his Lakers were up by 33 points at the end of the 3rd quarter, and once again, Kobe didn't play a second of the 4th quarter. The 3rd instance was on December 20th, 2005 against the Dallas Mavericks. You all know about this game, so I won't talk about it too long, but this was Kobe's famous 62 points in only 3 quarters, which is arguably the most impressive scoring performance of all time. It was 9 points more than what Kobe had through 3 quarters in the 81-point game. If Kobe had a 4th quarter just like the 3rd quarter of this game, or like the 4th quarter of the Raptors game, then he would have finished with 90 or 92 points. Honestly, I don't even think that's the craziest thing he passed up by sitting out the 4th quarter. At the end of the 3rd, the scoreboard read the Mavericks 61, Kobe 62. In the history of the league, no single player has ever finished with more points than the opposing team, and Kobe had a very realistic shot of achieving it on this evening. Keep in mind that he nearly did this against a Mavericks team that was in the better half of the league defensively, and went on to the NBA Finals that season. Instead, Kobe settled with a mere total of 62 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 steals on 58.1% shooting. The last instance that Kobe did this was on November 30th, 2006 against the Utah Jazz. It didn't matter that the Mamba was being guarded by the defensively elite Andrei Kirilenko, as he had one of the most efficient scoring explosions of his career. At one stretch, he hit 11 straight shots without a miss, en route to a third quarter stat line of 52 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists on 73.1% shooting. With the Lakers up by 22 points at the end of the third quarter, the Mamba comfortably rested the remainder of the evening. If the Mamba had played in the fourth quarter of each of these games, then we're looking at a resume today of a handful of 70-point games, several 80-point games, and possibly even a 90-point performance. If anyone ever bothers to call Kobe a stat patter, gently remind them of all the stats that the Mamba passed up. On December 5th, 2016, against the Indiana Pacers, Klay had his own three-quarter eruption. Many people describe Thompson as the ultimate catch-and-shoot type of player, and no game sums that up better than this one. He didn't need to play in the fourth quarter. In fact, he only played 29 minutes of the game, and in that time, he dropped 60 points on 63.6% shooting. He did all of this on only 11 dribbles in the game, which speaks to his talent and his unique skill set. Klay is one of only 2 players to score at least 50 points in less than 30 minutes of playing time. The other player we'll get to later in the video. Thanks to this dominant display, his Warriors were up by 33 points at the end of the third, which is why he didn't see a second of the fourth. Another Klay onslaught was cut short on January 23, 2015 against the Sacramento Kings. This is where Thompson famously set the record for the most points ever scored in a single quarter when he dropped 37. He finished the game with 52 points, 5 assists, 2 rebounds, 4 steals, and 2 blocks on 64% shooting. In that iconic quarter, he made up 37 of the Warriors' 41 points. His third quarter was literally perfect, as he went 13 of 13 from the field, 9 of 9 from three-point range, and 2 of 2 from the free throw line. The thing is, because of the blowout, he only played in 2 minutes and 32 seconds of the fourth quarter. Not only was he sitting on 52 with a significant amount of game left, but he had also made 11 threes at that point. If he had remained in the game, he could have possibly got the NBA record for the most three-pointers made in a single game. Speaking of which, the last Klay Thompson game was on October 29, 2018, and what I believe is his most interesting what-if on this list. It was against the lowly Chicago Bulls, who had no answer for his sniping throughout. On this evening, Klay set the NBA record for the most three-pointers made in a single game, with a total of 14. But what's absurd is that he set this record with 4 minutes and 53 seconds left in the third quarter. Not only did Klay not play in the fourth, but he didn't play in the final 16 minutes of the game. Not only could Klay have added to his impressive totals of 52 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals, but he also could have amassed a total of 3-pointers that may have never been challenged for as long as we live. On November 30th, 2019, James Harden exploded for one of his highest scoring contests against the Atlanta Hawks. This was during the peak of Harden's prime as a scorer, as the lowly Hawks had no answers for him anywhere on the court, as he dropped 60 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds, and 3 steals on 66.7% shooting. I'm sure there's a part of Harden that wanted to play, as reaching the 80-point threshold would obviously do a tremendous amount for his legacy. But if he had continued to play, it would have been the most unnecessary fourth quarter on this list, as the Rockets were leading the Hawks by as many as 50 points in the third quarter. On February 9th, 2019, Damian Lillard had a career night, lighting up the Sacramento Kings in only 3 quarters. He's yet another player who becomes extremely dangerous as he warms up from the perimeter, and the Kings learned that the hard way, as he poured in 50 points, 6 assists, and 3 steals on 61.5% shooting, including 8 3-pointers. He did that incredible stat line in only 29 minutes of play, which put him right beside Klay Thompson as the only players to ever reach 50 points in less than 30 minutes of game time. The Blazers had an 18-point lead at the end of the third, and the reserves held strong, allowing Lillard to spend the entirety of the fourth quarter on the bench. For this next one, we're going way back in time. On April 9, 1978, the Iceman, George Gervin, put on a show for the ages. This evening in the NBA was actually pretty fascinating, as it was the last night of the regular season, and the Celtics legend John Havlicek was playing his final game, which drew all of the media's attention. Unfortunately, that meant that the scoring race and the performances of David Thompson and George Gervin were not caught on film. David Thompson dropped 73 points to take the lead of the league scoring crown ahead of Gervin. George would then need to score 49 points against the New Orleans Jazz to take the scoring crown back from Thompson, and he was well aware of this. Well, Gervin scored 53 points in the first half. With their playoff seeding already locked in place, Gervin stayed in the game just long enough to pass David Thompson, as he finished with 63 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 steals on 46.9% shooting. His Spurs were blown out 153 to 132, but it was never about that, as San Antonio was content to rest their stars for the playoffs. Gervin didn't play in the fourth quarter and played only a total of 33 minutes. At the very least, an 80-point performance was in the realm of possibility if George really wanted it. The last performance on this list has a different spin to it. It came from Larry Bird on February 18, 1985 against the Utah Jazz. During his prime, Larry was known for filling up the stat sheet, but one game summed that up better than any other. In a blowout victory, Larry Legend put up a total of 30 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 9 steals on 59.1% shooting. The thing is, Larry didn't even play in the fourth quarter. Even crazier than that, he only played 33 minutes. Only 4 players in NBA history have ever achieved the illustrious quadruple-double, but none of those players did it in 3 quarters. At that point in history, only 1 player had achieved the quadruple-double. Not only could he have easily been only the second player to do it if he had simply played in the fourth quarter, but he had also tied the NBA record for the most steals in a game with 9. Just 1 more steal would have secured the record as his own, but Larry truly only cared about winning, so he passed that up too. So now it's your turn. I've got 2 questions for you guys. 1, which one of these performances was the most impressive? And 2, if you could see only one of these performances played out till the final buzzer, which game would it be? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks.
So today's video is going to be a little bit different and a little bit random, but I thought it would be a cool way to share some of my thoughts, share some of my experiences, and connect with you guys a little bit, because I want to hear your feedback as well. These are the top 5 games in NBA history that I regret missing. And what I mean by that is that I didn't see them live as they happened. I'm not talking about being in the stands and watching the game in person, because that rarely happened in my life. But I'm talking about sitting in front of a TV, experiencing everything as it went down, being in the moment, and living the excitement as it happened. And please, let me know in the comments below, what are the games that you regret missing live and not seeing as it happened? I'm not looking to cast any judgment or any condemnation for whatever people might have to say. Sometimes, life just doesn't allow you to do what you'd rather be doing. So that's what we're talking about. So let me get things started with number 5. January 13th, 2015, Kings versus the Warriors. For those of you who haven't figured it out yet, this was the game that Klay Thompson scored 37 points in a single quarter. I think it's going to be true that most of us, outside of Warriors fans, didn't see this game as it went down. With that being said, I did live in Northern California at this point, so I had a lot of Warriors fans in my life. The reason it frustrates me that I missed seeing this game live is because not only did Klay Thompson set the NBA record by scoring 37 points in a single quarter, but it was arguably the best 12 minutes of individual offensive basketball in the history of the game. He went 13 of 13 from the field, many of those shots were 3-pointers, and many of them had no business going in, but he was simply unconscious. I've grown up seeing many great players like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Kevin Durant, all kinds of great offensive scorers. And I've never seen a guy be as blistering hot as Klay Thompson was on that evening. And when I say that, obviously I'm talking about his highlight reel and watching the game in the past. But when you're watching a YouTube video or an ESPN highlight, and you already know heading into it that he achieved history and put up goofy numbers, it just doesn't hit the same to watch each basket go in time and time again.
I imagine the people who were in the crowd and who were watching that game live were just dumbfounded and had their jaws hitting the floor with what they were seeing. And personally, I wish I could have experienced that. Honestly, I can't even remember what I was doing that night nearly 10 years ago. But I do remember my buddy texting me saying that Klay Thompson just scored 37 points. And the very next text said, "in the third quarter alone." I didn't completely believe it until I saw the highlight reel. Number 4, The Malice at the Palace. This was all the way back in 2004. A lot of people didn't see this game live, but some people did. Even heading into this evening, it was a high-profile competition as you had 2 rivals and 2 Eastern Conference contenders competing in a regular season contest. Now this one kind of has a funny story to it. When I first heard about the Malice at the Palace, I was actually with my parents. My dad was driving, my mom was in the passenger seat, and we were listening to ESPN radio. Now while that was on, they talked about the brawl going down that evening. And then they played a soundbite of the commentators calling the radio broadcast, explaining the commotion and the chaos that ensued. I remember sitting in the back seat, listening to what was going on and thinking to myself, there is no freaking way that this brawl was nearly as crazy as it sounds. It just sounds like utter chaos and the most wild thing that's ever happened in a professional basketball game. Sure enough, when I got home, I turned on ESPN and I saw the highlights, if you can call them that, more like lowlights, basically on repeat, and was just utterly shocked at what happened. Obviously, it was ugly, it was embarrassing for the NBA, but as a basketball historian, I understand just how impactful this night was on the shaping of the league. And from that perspective, I really wish I could have seen it live. It was crazy to hear what was going down over the radio, but I can only imagine what I would have been thinking and what my reaction would have been if I had saw Ron Artest running into that crowd live, and everything that came afterwards. Number 3, March 8th, 2013, Lakers vs. Raptors. So here's what you need to know. I'm a huge Lakers fan and I'm a huge Kobe Bryant fan. I used to religiously watch basically every single Lakers game. Kobe's 62 3/4, I saw it. Kobe's 81-point game, I saw that. Kobe's 4 straight 50-point games, I saw all of those. Kobe's 9 games of 40 straight points, I saw those too. Kobe's 12 3-pointers against the Seattle Supersonics, I saw that record game as well. I honestly believe I've seen 95% of Kobe Bryant's games throughout his career just because that's how big of a Lakers fan I was. There was very few exceptions I made when there was a Laker game on that evening. This was one of the few of them, as I was taking my girlfriend at the time out on a date that night. I remember we had dinner, but ultimately it didn't work out, and within a couple months she was no longer with me. And guess what? That resulted in me missing arguably the most clutch Kobe Bryant performance of all time. Talk about regret. This was the game where he made 3 ridiculous 3-point shots as the fourth quarter was coming to a close. And if Kobe missed any one of these single 3-point shots, the Lakers lose this game. Then he went on into overtime and converted the game-winning dunk to seal the victory. This might just seem like a random regular season game against Toronto, but Kobe was in the midst of turning the Lakers season around and was dragging the underachieving 2012 to 2013 Lakers to the NBA playoffs, kicking and screaming. His numbers that evening were utterly ridiculous, and I remember for a short while he was in the MVP conversation. People who weren't closely following the Lakers that season really don't realize just how great Kobe was, despite the fact that they barely got into the playoffs just after he tore his Achilles. Ultimately, it was one of the best games of Kobe's career and one of the most clutch and meaningful regular season games that's ever been. Number 2, Game 5 of the 1997 NBA Finals, aka the flu game. Now obviously, missing an NBA Finals game is just crazy. But what you need to understand is that when you're an NBA superfan who's only 7 years old, you don't really make that many decisions for yourself. My dad was at work providing a livelihood for the family, and my mom had planned us to take a visit to go see my grandmother, who unfortunately didn't even have a television. Back at that time, I didn't have a smartphone, I didn't have access to the internet, there was basically no way I could know what was going on. And then one of the most historic, clutch, and epic performances of all time happened from the player who most people believe is the greatest of all time. I didn't find out what happened until I saw the newspaper the following day. Given the fact that I was only 7, I'm not sure what I could have really done to change that outcome, but I really wish I could have seen that game as it happened. Number 1. Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals. This one kills me. It embarrasses me to even admit that I never saw this game. It almost feels like an indictment on the quality of a basketball fan that I am. But the truth is, I didn't have a choice, and the fact that I missed this game actually helped shape my career. I'll explain. So obviously, as you guys all know, the Warriors got ahead of LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers 3-1 in the NBA Finals. And that's when Kyrie and LeBron both stepped up and charged back to force a Game 7. There was only one problem. Before I started my YouTube channel, I was actually doing construction, and we were doing it for a private school. We were working on a classroom where students were scheduled to be there the next day. So because of this project had to get done that day. Unfortunately, we were running behind schedule. And given the fact that I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, all of the guys on that job wanted to get the job done in a timely fashion. Then it's 2 p.m., then 3 p.m., then 4 p.m., and we still have a lot of things left on our plate. 5 p.m., 6 p.m. We are working as hard as we can, trying to get as much done as we can, but at that point, the writing was in the wall. And as a basketball fan, it was one of the most frustrating and depressing nights that I can possibly remember. We didn't end up finishing the job until 11:30 p.m., well after the game was over. I drove home trying not to get any updates. I tried to find a replay of the game, couldn't find it anywhere. So finally, I settled for watching a YouTube highlight and saw what happened in a matter of 5 minutes. It was at that point that I decided my job needs to be something centered around the NBA, because I don't ever want to miss a game like this ever again. And it was around that time that I first started thinking about starting this YouTube channel, and now it's my career. So I guess it all turned out alright, but the fact that I didn't see arguably the greatest NBA Finals game in NBA history does haunt me quite a bit. So now it's your guys' turn. What is a game that you didn't get to see live that still haunts you to this day? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.